Hello my friends, my name is G.P.S. and welcome back. I have done quite a few ranking videos recently, but since so many of you seem to enjoy this type of video and I love making them, I figured why not do another one, but rather than looking at one brand exclusively or one specific product lineup today, we'll be discussing and ranking some of the most iconic luxury houses based on their hero products, their iconic pieces that they've been making for decades, but also their most recent collections, pricing, if there have been price increases, we'll be sure to discuss that too, and really just the first thing that comes to mind when we think of these brands. So if you'd like to hear my review on some of the most popular luxury houses, and find out which are the brands that you will be seeing a lot more of on here, and which are the ones that I have kind of given a timeout, then please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and keep on watching. I believe this is going to be my third or fourth ranking video, so I'm sure you know the drill by now. We'll be using the exact same tier maker app that I always use, but I have slightly adjusted the categories just to make them a little bit more appropriate for this type of a video. But if you want to catch up on all my ranking videos, I will make sure to put a playlist together for you with all these types of videos, obviously the majority of them being on Hermes, and I'll make sure to have the playlist linked up here and also in the info box. So if you want to catch up, you can just go click on that playlist and that will have all the videos in there. But I want to walk you through obviously the tiers that we'll be categorizing the products in because they have slightly been tweaked. So on top we have Ride or Die. These are the brands that I absolutely adore and I hope I'll be able to continue buying them for the rest of my life. I don't see us breaking up anytime soon. That doesn't mean that these brands are perfect and they don't make mistakes, but I enjoy a lot of their things and the majority of the things that they create. Next up we have I'll Take One. These are the brands that I still very much enjoy, but I wouldn't really go out of my way to get my hands on their pieces. But if I'm in the store and if I find something that I like, I will be sure to pick one up because I'm happy with the overall design, their aesthetic, and the quality too. The third category is Hit or Miss. These are the brands that make some things that I like, but also things that I don't really enjoy. These are the kind of brands that it just really comes down to the individual pieces for me to decide whether I'm going to move ahead with the purchase or not. Then fourth, we have Meh. These are the brands that just really don't do it for me. I think there is a selected group of people that these brands would work for. Perhaps people with an acquired taste, but for me, they are just not really the one. If I get gifted something from any one of these brands, I would be perfectly happy with that, but I really wouldn't spend too much money on them. And then the last category is No Thanks. These are the brands that I would really easily pass on. We have quite a few brands to go through and not a lot of time because I am basically surrounded by construction from every single angle. So I'm filming this video at noon. I'm hoping that everyone is going to be on their lunch break, so we don't have too much time. Otherwise, there will be drilling coming through from every single angle. So our first brand here is Saint Laurent, and when you see these pictures of these products, I'm not necessarily critiquing these individual products in this video, but these were the pieces that first came to me when I thought of the brand. So we have the YSL sandals here, which if I keep referring to Saint Laurent as YSL, it's not because that I don't know that they're called Saint Laurent these days, but for me, they'll forever remain YSL. And these sandals, when they first came out, maybe a few years ago, I really liked the idea of. I'm not someone who wears heels, so I wouldn't buy these for myself, but I love the idea of them. I thought they were really, really cool. Obviously, they're not for the faint of heart or for those who want to stay really subtle with their branding, but at this point, they are an iconic piece that they keep making each season in different variations. So if you love Saint Laurent, this is a must for you. But let's talk about Saint Laurent or YSL in general, because I was a pretty big fan of Saint Laurent back in the day. I bought a lot of their ready-to-wear pieces for myself that I have shared in previous videos. And I think if I had to choose one brand that I would continue buying ready-to-wear pieces from, I could easily go with Saint Laurent because I can rely on the quality, I can rely on their aesthetic. But that is also kind of their downfall, that they are so predictable. I think that they have become quite redundant over the years. They are really comfortable with what they know best, and they're not willing to innovate on that or grow or evolve. I mean, it doesn't matter if you look at their men's or their women's line. Each season they have pretty much the exact same pieces, maybe in different textures or different prints. It doesn't really matter how many seasons go by and how many trends born and die. They're always going to have the exact same inspiration in every single one of their collections, but nothing exciting in my opinion at this point. But other than their ready-to-wear, I have always been a huge fan of the Sac de Jour bag, for example. I think at this point that is an iconic bag that is really well priced if you're looking for an entry-level bag into the world of luxury, or if you're trying to invest in a bag that you can use on a daily basis, that is going to hold up well, it's good quality, but it's not too obnoxious when it comes to branding. So based on everything that we've just discussed, where do we put Saint Laurent? So I'm thinking I'll take one. Next on our list is Louis Vuitton, and I could have chosen any one of their recent bag launches to represent the brand as a whole, because they have set some pretty big trends in the past couple of years. But I went for the on-the-go tote bag because this bag, alongside with the Dior book tote, were pioneers in bringing larger bags back into trend. And even though I've loved the idea of this bag, of it being this large carry-all with everything that you need it can hold, I personally never even considered purchasing this for myself because it came in the monogram canvas initially. And even though they have since expanded on this line and now it's also available in leather and different variations, it's still not a bag that I would add to my collection, purely because I'm not the biggest Louis Vuitton fan. And these days there are so many brands that do these similar huge bottomless tote bags that I would much rather opt for a brand that I have a closer connection with than Louis Vuitton. Not because there's anything wrong with it, I'm just not a big monogram person, and there are brands that I enjoy more. But while we're on the topic of bags, let's quickly discuss and touch on my thoughts on some of Louis Vuitton's most popular bags. So another bag that I have to point out that is kind of iconic from Louis Vuitton is the Petite Mauve, which is their tiny little trunk bags. That's a bag that I picked up last year that I wore maybe once or twice, and I was pretty happy with it. I think it's a little bit overpriced for what you're getting, but it is beautiful and it is quite unique. The twist bag from Louis Vuitton is also really cool. Again, you have to love Louis Vuitton and their aesthetic to enjoy it, but if you do, that's a great bag. And then the rest of the Louis Vuitton bags, I first of all don't even know the name of, and I don't even care to learn, because I have honestly been pretty disappointed with the quality of Louis Vuitton bags. At least the ones that I've seen in stores or the ones that my friends own. I just don't find that the quality lives up to the price, unless we talk about the Capucine bags from Louis Vuitton, which is sort of in a league on its own. I don't think that the Capucine is really comparable to any other bags in the Louis Vuitton lineup, other than maybe the Petite Mauve, because the Capucine is head and shoulders above everything else from Louis Vuitton in terms of quality, craftsmanship, construction, and also the timeless elegance feel to it. If you're looking to buy a true investment piece from Louis Vuitton, the Capucine I think is a great piece to go for, but bear in mind that it's going to be a lot more expensive than some of the more popular bags from the brand. But if I had to give you sort of one recommendation of the creme de la creme when it comes to Louis Vuitton, in my opinion, it would be the Capucine. So I think for me, Louis Vuitton is going to go in, I would say, hit and miss, because there are still pieces that I like and I would consider picking up, but there are some major misses for me. Next up, we have Hermes, and if you have been with me for any amount of time, I'm sure by now you're clear on my stance with Hermes. Hermes is my most favorite brand of them all. It's the brand that I have been interested in for the longest time and the brand that I have been buying consistently for the longest time. And it's a brand that I really adore, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that I'm blind to Hermes's misses. I'm by no means saying that everything that they come out with is flawless. I regularly talk about pieces that I'm not a fan of, or I think that they are not up to the standards of Hermes, or the standards, the aesthetic standards that I have grown accustomed to, or pieces that are not up my alley. So I'm not going to blindly approve of everything that Hermes launches. I'm going to be just as critical as I am with everything else. But there's one big difference between my critique with Hermes and the rest of the brands, which is that I know that whatever Hermes launches and whatever they come out with, even if it's not my taste and not my cup of tea, I know that the piece will meet the highest quality standards and they will not be cutting corners no matter what they launch and no matter the price range. They can launch something, let's say a lipstick that's $50, $60, $70, or a bag that's $10, $11, $12,000. It doesn't matter because I know that Hermes has done their best to meet the highest quality standards and they have gone to the best people to create those pieces for them. So for me, that's the biggest difference when it comes to Hermes, that no matter what they come out with, even if it's not something that is my taste, I know that if someone else will enjoy it, the quality is going to be outstanding and they can rely on having that piece in their collection forever. So because of that, Hermes is just my most favorite brand, not only because their heritage is close to my heart and because their aesthetic is one that I very much identify with, but also because their quality is just unmatched. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the truth. So for me, Hermes, of course, is going to be a ride or die. Moving on, we have a similarly iconic and classic heritage brand, which is actually very often mentioned on the same page as Hermes, which is of course Chanel. Now I have to say that out of all the brands that we'll be discussing and all the brands out there, I probably have the most tumultuous relationship with Chanel because some days I love them, other days I cannot even stand them. And the same goes for their launches. Some of them I adore, others I don't even know what they were thinking. Right now we are in a pretty good relationship with Chanel. Their latest Métier d'Art collection, I'm not sure if that's the latest one, but the most recent one that hit stores, I adored. I thought it was an amazing collection. And there are a couple of things coming for me, so there might be some new Chanel pieces that you'll be seeing in an unboxing really soon. One thing that I know has never really worked out for me is their bags and their leather goods. I never felt that I found my Holy Grail Chanel bag the one that suited my style and my taste and my expectations when it comes to quality and the way the bags hold up. I think that Chanel has received a lot of critique for their quality and how their quality has been declining over the years as their prices were increasing, which, let's just talk about their price increases for a quick second, which I know was quite a controversial topic. Some people were for it, some people were very much against it. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually don't mind the Chanel price increase. Well, it's not that I don't mind it, but I see why they're doing what they were doing. Now, personally, the reason why I don't blame them for doing that is because a lot of us, including myself, have been blaming Chanel for losing their exclusivity and saying that it's no longer special to walk into a Chanel boutique and buy a bag. Well, now we've got what we've been asking for. Be really careful with what you wish for because sometimes you actually get it. Well, this time we did because their prices have put them at a point where I think very few people will be walking into one of their boutiques and clearing shelves. I'm not saying no one will. Obviously, Chanel still has a really strong and really loyal customer base. But I think we've been asking for more exclusive bags and more exclusive treatment and better quality. Well, the price has risen, so I'm hoping that this will give them the chance to also improve upon their quality, their customer service, their availability. And then moving on to ready-to-wear. Yes, a lot of Chanel's ready-to-wear is classic, it's timeless, it's beautifully crafted, but at this point, so ridiculously expensive that I personally have a really hard time justifying buying anything from them from the ready-to-wear line. There are a couple of pieces that I'm going to try from the Métier d'Art collection, but I'm not 100% convinced that I'll be actually buying them in the end because they are so insanely expensive. But where do we put Chanel based on everything that we have discussed? So, because of the Métier d'Art collection, it was a collection that I loved, and there were so many pieces that made me hopeful for Chanel's future and that there is a lot of greatness to come from them, that I'm thinking about putting them in hit or miss. It's a miss because of their pricing, how ridiculously priced they are. But I think if the quality meets where their prices are at, we cannot have an issue with that. Our next brand is one that I actually feel goes really well with Chanel because they share the same sort of ladies who lunch aesthetic, or at least they used to back in the day, which is Van Cleef. Now, Van Cleef is a brand that I have already talked about this year because I purchased a necklace from them, which I'll make sure to leave my unboxing linked up here in case you want to see my latest piece from them and also hear my thoughts and more in-depth review on the brand. But Van Cleef is a brand that, for me, is pretty much synonymous with the Alhambra line. Yes, the Alhambra line is not the end-all and be-all of Van Cleef. There is so much more that they do. But for me, when I think of Van Cleef, I think of Alhambra. They also make some other beautiful lines. They have ones that are inspired by butterflies and little pearls. The pearl one, I cannot stand. They look really weird in my opinion. They have beautiful timepieces. But for me, Van Cleef is pretty much the same thing as Alhambra, and Alhambra is the same thing as Van Cleef. So for me, Van Cleef is a brand that has a really strong aesthetic that they stick to. And it is, I have a hard time because of that if it's going to be, I'm not going to say I'll take one because it's a brand that I can pull off very few pieces from because of my personal taste. But their pieces are always beautifully crafted, not too expensive, I feel, for what they are. And the fact that they set their stones in such a unique way. They're going to go into I'll take one, and that's not because I will personally take one of everything that they have. But I think if this sort of aesthetic is your cup of tea, you cannot go wrong with any one of their pieces because they're beautifully made, they're unique, and they have that timeless elegance that we all love. Let's look at a brand that is quite different from the brands that we have just discussed. And it's going to be an unpopular opinion, but I have to tell you, I do really like this brand, which is Gucci. I think Gucci had its revival a few years ago, and it was probably the hottest brand out there. But I'm finding that it has sort of become the trend to hate on Gucci. And that is because obviously their pieces are in your face, they're loud, they're showy. And are they obnoxious? Yes, they are. But if anyone can pull off obnoxious, it is Gucci. I really cannot think of any other brand who has made their pieces being covered in their logos so acceptable and so high fashion. I don't think that their pieces are always appropriate when it comes to their more mainstream pieces, but I do think that there is a time and a place for them, and they can be styled in some really fun and cool ways. But what I think a lot of people don't think about when they critique Gucci is that there is so much more to the brand than just their sort of mainstream logo-filled pieces. Gucci each season comes out with some stunning, truly high fashion pieces without them dripping in the Gucci double G or the Gucci logos. So if you really want to find something from Gucci that is more timeless and that is not covered in logos, you absolutely can. But obviously these days, people want to get their money's worth out of whatever they buy, and they feel that the more logos there are, the more their pieces are worth, which is not always the case, but if that's what you love, I mean, Gucci is the perfect brand for you. For me, Gucci is going to be a hit and miss. This next brand, to be really candid with you, I kind of forgot even existed. And it's not because I want to be rude about them or dismissive towards this brand, but it just slipped my mind that they were even around at this point, which is Tiffany. Until more recently, when I came across them promoting their newer line, which is called the hardware. I believe they're called the Tiffany hardware line, which I actually thought was really, really cool. I had a chance to go and see it a couple of weeks ago, and I shared a picture on my Instagram. I have to tell you, I was really impressed by this hardware line. I felt it was very much on trend, but it still had that quality that you expect to see from Tiffany. It was chunky, it felt really substantial, and after seeing it, trying it, and playing around with it, I even briefly considered picking it up, but I decided against it in the end, just because there are so many other pieces that I would much rather prioritize before picking up something from Tiffany. But if you are in the market for a new piece of fine jewelry, one that's really modern and sort of futuristic, but it also has that really elegant and timeless feel to it, which is of course is what Tiffany is known for. Usually they're stuck in the past, but this was a very fashion forward piece that I thought looked beautiful and really expensive. Then the hardware line is one that I would love to put on your radar because I don't think you'd be disappointed. And because of that, I'm going to put Tiffany in meh, mainly because none of the other pieces I would be interested in. Obviously, if someone gifts me something from Tiffany, I'm not going to turn it down. But I'm definitely not going to go out to spend my own money on Tiffany, unless it's from the hardware line, but because I didn't pick it up in the end. Clearly there was something, a little voice in the back of my mind telling me not to do it. So because of that, it's going to go to meh, which is a huge step up because of the hardware line, because otherwise it would have been a definite no thanks. Coming up, we have another fine jewelry house that, unlike Tiffany, is definitely not struggling with being perceived as underrated. If anything, they are very often overrated, which is Cartier. Now, I don't want to go into too much details and too much depth about this brand because I have talked about them quite recently. My last video that you saw before this was on Cartier with some of my recommendations. And then I had also done a video on some of the Cartier pieces that I would recommend that you skip. So I'll make sure to have those videos linked up here and also down below. But for me, because of all those reasons that I have discussed before, Cartier is going to be a hit or miss. I still think that to this day, they have some incredibly beautiful pieces that are unmatched in terms of craftsmanship and innovation. But a lot of their pieces are a miss for me at this point. Here we go again with another fine jewelry house. This time it's Bulgari. And you might be surprised that I didn't use one of their iconic jewelry pieces to represent the brand here. But that's because I actually feel that their fine jewelry isn't as spectacular as their bags. I think Bulgari's leather bags are some of the most underestimated luxury bags out there. They feature some really unique and innovative designs. They look and feel beyond expensive, and they're nowhere near as expensive for the quality and for the design as they could be. And I feel that not enough attention is given to Bulgari bags. So if you'd like to see a deep dive on Bulgari, on the brand as a whole, or maybe just on their bags, be sure to let me know in the comment section or give this video a thumbs up, because it's a brand that I have been thinking about doing a deep dive on because I really think that they deserve it, especially because if prices keep increasing by all the brands out there, I wouldn't be surprised if we also saw a price jump from Bulgari. So before that, I would love to do a video on them. Just if you see something that you like, you can pick it up at a much better price. Obviously, I don't know if they'll be doing a price increase. I have no intel, but I wouldn't be surprised just as I'm seeing prices fluctuate. Bulgari, I'm thinking if it should be a hit or a miss or a meh, because I adore their bags so much, and even though they're not my style, there really isn't one bag from the Bulgari collection that I couldn't or wouldn't stand behind. So those are a huge hit for me. But their jewelry and the rest is not anything that I have an issue with, so I don't know if they would be meh for me. So I'm gonna just go with hit or miss. Because of their bags, there isn't anything wrong with their jewelry or with their watches either. They're not pieces that I would buy, but their bags I am just a huge, massive fan of. And the last brand that we have here to discuss today is one that is just as iconic as Chanel and as Hermes, and I'm sure you will need no introduction, which is of course Dior, as you can probably tell just by looking at the picture of the iconic Lady Dior bag. Because as soon as I think of Dior, I think of the Lady Dior bag and this incredibly elegant, timeless sophistication and refinement that is synonymous with Dior, in my head at least. If you had a chance to watch my recent Dior unboxing, you already know my thoughts on their menswear line, which is that some of their pieces I adore, others I don't particularly care for, because they're a little bit too showy for me. But one thing that I have to point out about Dior is that when it comes to them approaching this sort of logo filled trend, they try to be as creative as they possibly can be, and they often collaborate with contemporary artists to update their logos and put a twist on them, which I personally really appreciate. I'm a big fan of art and art history, and by buying these pieces, I almost feel like I'm not just buying a piece of fashion, but I'm also buying a piece of art. But just to discuss one of their most recent launches, the one that stood out to me the most was probably the release of their new micro bag line. If you haven't seen those bags, they basically scale down some of their most iconic bags. I believe 4 different styles in total to be exact. The Dior Caro bag, which is basically their take on a Chanel classic flap. The Saddle bag, which is of course one of their most iconic bags. Not my favorite, especially not in this micro size, because I don't think that the Saddle bag is functional as it is in just its regular sizes. So I can only imagine how difficult the micro version would be to use. But they also have the 30 Montaigne, which personally was my favorite, and if I picked one up, that would be the one that I went for. And then they also have a new micro version of the Lady Dior bag. Now the Lady Dior bag has always been one of my most favorite luxury bags out there. I think it is extremely underestimated these days and underrated, but I think it remains to be one of the most classic and timeless pieces to buy. So if you want to invest your money in a bag that is going to last a lifetime, it's not going to go out of trend, but it's not as expensive as some other brands of the moment. The Lady Dior is not one that should be forgotten about. So for me, Dior is going to be an I'll take one. It's not a ride or die, it's not a brand that I couldn't live without, or a brand that I don't think I'll fall out of love with at one point. Personally, I don't see it happening at this point, but you know, everything is possible. And this completes today's video of me ranking some of the most iconic luxury brands. And now it's your turn to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I would love to know what you think about these brands, what your ranking would be. Do you agree with my tier? Would you have placed something somewhere else? Please share your thoughts in the comment section with me. I would love to know. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.